Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome as you are coming in. Let's see, people are slowly coming in. Hello, everybody. I'm Jada Shapiro, founder of Boober. Welcome to Hatch. I'm going to start, as I always do, by just asking you to drop into the chat. Let me know who's out there with me and with us. Who are we? If you could drop your due date and where you live, that would be great. We love to see who is here. And I'll just wait for some more people to come in. I'm going to launch my share screen in a minute. Let me know if you've been here before. Have we met? I teach a lot of the classes here. This is going to be a night where we talk about hacking your hospital bag. And let me just... Who's out there? I don't know if you can hear me. Thank you, Jenna. Due July 21st in Arizona. Lisa Main from Atlanta, due July 16th. Awesome. Did anybody go? Did you see the eclipse today? Pretty cool watching all the kids doing that. Who else have we got out there? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is it Amelie? Or due May 20th in California. I'm from California, but I am coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, where I live now. We do teach sometime. I don't know if you're in the LA area, but every now and then we teach out there. All right, as people are coming in, welcome. I am just opening up to the chat, and we have Amelia after Michigan. Let's see, due April 16th. Oh, wow, you're our closest. Oh my goodness. Okay, so who here has packed their hospital bag, if anybody? Let me go ahead and share my screen right now, and then we will get started. So can somebody drop in the chat and let me know? Partially. Okay, Amelia, it's never too late. Don't worry. Let me know if you can see just the screen that says hacking your hospital bag. Just want to make sure. So welcome to Hatch. Welcome to Boober. Hatch is fabulous. Jenna, thank you. Hatch is an amazing lifestyle brand, which offers fantastic maternity, postpartum wear, lots of different, of course, clothing that you can wear and nurse in and all of the things. But they're also an amazing brand that really cares about education. And that's why we get to do all of these things coming to you. And I don't know if you've been to any of my classes before, but I teach a lot of classes here. And I hope you've come to some of the other ones. Boober, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself in a moment. And as people are coming in, do feel free to drop into the chat. Let us know where you live and when you are due. Just like to create a little community here, even though we can't all see each other. So you can feel like you are doing this with other people and you are not alone. So welcome to Hacking Your Hospital Bag. A little bit about me. I'm Jada. I am a longtime birth and postpartum doula. I've been doing it for over 20 years now. So I've been to many, many hundreds of births and many thousands of families I've worked with in the classroom and in postpartum and as a birth doula and as a childbirth educator. Hey, Tara from LA. I'm from LA. Due April 21st. You're due really soon too. We've got April 16th and then you next. Awesome. So we have a lot of doulas out in LA too, even though we're based here in New York. So again, longtime doula, childbirth educator, super passionate about education. Knowledge is power. I'm a longtime lactation counselor as well. I help people get breastfeeding or body feeding off to the best start. I am a mom and stepmom. I have 4 daughters, 3 stepdaughters, age 14 to 18, 1 daughter that I gave birth to whose age is 16. And I'm also the founder of 2 companies in this space. Birthday Presents, which I started in 2002, which is now a doula training and lactation counselor training organization. So if you end up deciding to become a doula or lactation counselor after you have your baby, and I tell you the truth, this happens a lot. We get a lot of our students come a couple years later to train with us. So I'm also the founder of Boober. So what do we do exactly? We help you all find amazing support. So if you need a birth doula or you need a postpartum doula, please reach out to us. We will help you find, we have in-person providers all over the place, and virtual care, of course, is possible as well. Lactation consultants, in person or virtual, and then lots of other types of support. There are perinatal mental health counselors, which means literally a counselor or therapist who specifically only works with pregnancy and postpartum, pelvic floor, massage therapist, all the things, right? And we also offer a lot of classes. I'm going to give you codes, pretty good discount code tonight for classes with us. We do childbirth classes. We do infant safety and CPR online, live, or in person, lactation and newborn care, infant sleep, introduction to solids, pumping back to work, lots and lots of different things. So hope you'll join us for some of that. And welcome, Gina. Also do in LA. Gina, you might be, we often teach kind of quarterly, sometimes right now classes in LA. So we might have a class for you before you have your baby. I'm not sure. Tara, not before you. And welcome, Janie from Cambridge, due July. All right. So we're going to talk about things like, what do I wear? What do I pack? What do I eat and drink? You know, all of that stuff we're going to run through, and then we'll take your Q&A. So when do I pack my bag? So I saw a few people, you know, somebody raised their hand, somebody said they've had their bag. So again, if you have packed somewhat, drop it in the chat, let us know. Or if you're like, no, that's why I came here, right? So when do I pack my bag? So thinking about it, use your estimated due date. We know it's just an estimate, of course, right? Anybody have a guess as to what percent of babies actually come on the due date? Feel free to drop in the chat your guess. But you'll see why. This is why we like to tell people, tell them your due window. I know everybody gets obsessed with the due date and then they start calling you and asking you, did you have the baby yet? Did you have the baby yet? So for those, you know, I know that everybody probably already did, but the estimated due date is a window, and it's a window from 37 weeks typically to 42 weeks. And there's variability in there, of course. But, you know, so we're thinking about that. Only 5% of babies actually ever come on their due date. It's very rare. Think about packing sometime in your third trimester, usually a good time, right? It's never too late to pack. Of course, you can do it in early labor if you have to, but that's a lot more stressful, right? So if we, you know, some people like to get it all set and they start doing it even earlier, but waiting till the week of your due date, maybe too late, only in the sense that if your birth goes really fast, you're getting out of there. And I assume you're all in the hospital because you came to Hack Your Hospital class. But if anybody is having a home birth and just wanted to know about packing a hospital bag in case of transfer, this works for you as well. So, you know, you do want to aim to be done packing by your 36th week of pregnancy. And I'm going to drop a blog post about this in here as well in a little bit. So aim to be done packing your bag by around the 36th week. That means you're not quite in your due window yet. Of course, some people do go a little bit earlier than that, but, you know, thinking about that. And what do you use? You could use a rolly suitcase, depending, like, are you walking a lot, carrying a lot? Depends where you live. Of course, I live in New York. There's a lot more walking, but I'm from LA where there's a lot more driving. So I know both lives. You might go duffel bag. What's nice about a duffel bag, packing that way, is that in case you need a peanut ball and there's no peanut ball at the hospital, you can totally use your duffel bag of clothes. But of course, it's harder to carry a duffel bag. Somebody'd have to carry that for you. We don't really need a laboring pregnant person walking through holding heavy things. The Wheel-A-Pack sometimes is a little easier if you have a lot of stuff. But peanut balls are known to really help open the pelvis and keep the pelvis open, especially if you choose to use pain medication during labor, like an epidural, where we tend to just kind of lay back and stop moving, right? And labor can slow or stall. We talk about that a lot more in childbirth basics class, which I hope you'll join us for. But if you put something between your knees, thighs, legs, like a peanut ball, you know, which they might have at your hospital, just simply opening up the hips while you lay there makes a huge difference. But a duffel bag's so easy to do that with. You can also wrap up a bunch of sheets or use some jackets, some clothes. So, you know, think about that, okay? Make it easy enough to carry, depending if your doula is there, you know, doulas carry a lot of the stuff too. If your partner, if you have a partner or a doula, they can you know, carry stuff if you have friends or family coming, depending on what the limit of the amount of people. Usually most people are allowed 2 people in a room, but do check. Some places, you know, if you're in a birth center, there's no restrictions, or in a home birth, there are no restrictions. In hospitals, it can be anywhere from 1 to 3 people typically. Also, a shoulder bag can be nice if you keep it little separate, all of the things that you might need that are easy, like your wallet, right? Like glasses, hair ties, easy things that you might need, which we'll talk about, but also the important paperwork stuff. If you're bringing a birth plan and birth references sheet, all that can go in your kind of, shoulder bag. So, some things to wear, and it all just popped up, but comfort is super key. Thinking about safe stepping, a lot of people like to just throw on an easy slip-on Croc or a big shoe or something. Our feet get often quite swollen toward the end. They might give you these like socks with the little things, rough patches on the bottom or rubber on the bottom for safe stepping. They could give that to you in the hospital. But you might also find that, you know, you just want to bring your own slippers or Crocs or things. And also after the birth, if you get a lot of fluids in your body, if you happen to be require an induction, that might mean you go on fluids for days, and then we will be quite swollen after. If you have pain medication at all, they will pump you with a lot of fluids as well. And so you might go in less swollen than you actually come out sometimes. Other things, you might think about are, right, like underwear, and this is packing to wear for either there or after. Now, during labor, a lot of times our underwear is just going to come off, or we're going to want to wear some kind of like large comfy underwear or mesh underwear that we can put, if you're leaking a lot, if your water's broken, then you're going to be leaking the entire time. And so we're dripping. Now, a lot of people go underwearless in labor eventually because they're getting pelvic exams or vaginal exams, and they get tired of taking the underwear on and off. But if you are leaking or bleeding a lot, then you do sometimes want to have a pad, and so that is something to think about. These are also after underwear, right, where they have like Thinx or, super absorbent postpartum underwear we can think about. This is the Hatched hospital bag, and I'm going to give you guys a shopping code for Hatch as well. And with that shopping code, you get 15% off. And they do have a Hatched hospital bag, which has like super soft, comfy labor dress. I want to remind you or let you know, you might not have realized this, but you don't actually have to wear the hospital gown if you don't want to. That's a choice. I had one client once who was a nurse herself, and she was like, I can't wait to wear the hospital gown. I was like, oh, really? Nobody's ever said that before. So she was just excited for that, right? So if whatever you imagine yourself feeling, like powerful, cute, fun, if you want. Some people like a fun look. Other people are like, I don't really care. I'm going to bleed on the thing and have fluids coming out of me. And yeah, I want to be in a hospital gown. Other people feel like when they wear a hospital gown, they feel like they might be considered a sick patient. And you guys are fine. You're not sick. You're well. You're having a baby. So a lot of people just prefer to wear a loose, dress. They might wear a tank top that's long. They might wear a button down shirt, a big wide button down shirt. And then you can easily unbutton it later for nursing. There's dresses that are specifically designed for labor, right? And then we're thinking about packing to wear after. Ooh, right? Diapers, not just for babies. I'll give them to you there. But super duper pads are coming after. And so some people just like to wear, people will sometimes, like I said, well, I didn't say this yet. A lot of people used to just bring Depends or like, big absorbent undies like that. But now that there's all these different postpartum brands, or, Thinx again, that does absorbent underwear, you can use those for postpartum if you want, but they'll also give you a ton of pads, etc. If you want to come to our prep for postpartum class, I'm also going to give you a code for that. We do a deep dive into preparing for postpartum. So toiletries and personal care items you want to bring as well, right? So you're thinking like a lot of people find their contacts really irritating in labor, so they want to have glasses if they wear contacts. Think about little, shampoo, stuff like that, because you have to take a shower after if you'd like. Toothbrush, mints, things like that. Some people like to bring a freshening up wipe because they just get tired. A lot of people like to bring wipes that have a really soothing smell for labor as well, like a lavender-based wipe to be calming, but also refreshing, right? Hair ties are really important to have, or clips or whatever to pull your hair out of your face, things like that. So any of your personal care items that would be useful for you. And then if you have a birth partner, thinking about like what to pack for them, They might also want to freshen up after hours or days in the hospital, right? So bringing a change of clothes and things like that. Extra underwear, socks, a button-down shirt is also excellent for partners. Skin-to-skin contact with the baby, lots of it. Now, we usually hold on skin-to-skin contact for the partner until after the birthing parent has had that initial skin-to-skin contact to allow an initial first latch. If you're planning to breastfeed or body feed, that is one of the best ways to get lactation off to the best start is to allow the baby to be in skin-to-skin contact for as long as they want, as long as they're well, until they latch on. If you come to our lactation class, or you can buy our pre-recorded lactation class as well, you will learn all about how to get a great first latch. Or maybe you'll come to my lactation 101 that I do here as well. All right. It says sweater, and this can go for both of you. Sometimes you want, now people in labor, the laboring people are usually are working so hard they get very hot, which is why also bringing like a fan is a really nice thing to have. I'm just grabbing, anything can be a fan, right? Like a piece of paper. They get very, very hot. And however, sometimes depending on the weather, like air conditioning can be on so high, it's so cool that people can get very chilly. And so having a nice big wraparound like sweater or something like that that's comfy and cozy can also be really good for both parties, actually. So your own personal care and toiletries, oops. And actually, I just want to add on to this, we're going to talk about eating and drinking, but making sure that for the birth partner, you have plenty to eat and drink without having to run out of the room and leave the scenario. Some places you can order in, like in New York, people just order to the hospital and they'll deliver food to you, but that's not accessible, obviously, to everybody. So you are making sure they usually have a patient or family fridge that you can leave stuff in. You can bring, nibbles and foods for you. And one other thing I mentioned for partners is if you are really, you need your caffeine every day, you don't want to get that terrible headache or be so tired the next day that you're not able to help. So you might want to bring something like, caffeinated beverage in a can or bottle that can just be in your bag if you need it, if the birth goes very long. Because again, not ideally, most people don't want you to leave the room. Sometimes you will. So what do you pack to eat and drink in general? Couple of different things for labor. Let's think about that. So generally for the laboring person, we want to think about light, bland snacks. But let's back up first. And let me ask here, has anybody here talked to their midwife or doctor about can they eat and drink during labor? And what have been some of the answers? It's usually helpful for other people in the community to hear some of the different answers. So has anybody been given the okay, like we were told you can eat and drink whatever you want, or you can only have clear fluids, or you're not allowed to have anything? Okay, Gina, you haven't asked yet. Totally cool. This is a great thing for people to ask. Has anybody been told that they can eat whatever they want? I'm curious. So we talk about this also a lot more in the childbirth class, but we're still telling a lot of people who go into labor that they are not allowed to eat and drink at the hospital, even though there's absolutely no studies right now that show that withholding food and drink from laboring people is the correct thing to do. ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, actually most recently stated that it is really important that we do more studies because they can't say absolutely that people should fully eat and drink, but they also now are saying from their studies that they are not necessarily endorsing withholding food or drink anymore. So right now, Emma, as you're mentioning in DC, Emma, due May 2nd, with the midwives in your hospital, it's clear liquids only. Yeah, so that's fairly common, which is better than the nothing that it was for a long time. But we also have a lot of places in hospitals that have what's called a birthing center inside of a hospital where they'll be on like a different floor, floor 11. In New York, we have the birth centers that are on floor 11. And on floor 11, you can eat and drink whatever you want. You can get in the birthing tub. You can be on all fours when you birth. You can walk around. You can be intermittently monitored, like all this stuff, right? But then on floor 12, the people in labor aren't allowed to eat and drink. And it was wild for so many years working in hospitals being like, but it's the same hospital. Like, why would these people be allowed? And clearly if anybody had ever had any kind of demise or, mortality or morbidity from eating, that would have been stopped. And we never saw that. So they never restricted food and drink on this floor, but they did on this floor. So it's super interesting. And then when you start talking to individual midwives and doctors, a lot of them do fully allow. They will fully allow you to eat and drink as you wish. And the reasoning behind it, what's interesting, right, is that if you do ask your midwife or doctor, they might say clear liquids only in the hospital, but eat whatever you want before you come in, right? So most of us, and all of the studies show also that our digestion slows down actually when we're in labor, and that we never truly have an empty stomach. The reason these rules are in place still and why we're still figuring it out is because in the 1940s and 50s, but especially, at that time, we were anesthetizing everybody in labor. We would knock them out. We would give them, right, this drug. They would be knocked out. We would intubate them. And then there was a higher risk of aspirating the stomach content. Now, this is in the 1940s. We're almost 100 years later, practically. Our intubation methods are significantly better, and almost nobody, even in a real emergency, only in an extreme emergency, do people go under general anesthesia at this point. So to withhold food and drink from people is like saying, you should never eat and drink because you might be in an accident one day and we might need to operate on you. And that's really, like, I've talked to a lot of anesthesiologists. They feel that way as well. So there is a movement towards shifting this. A lot of people just eat and drink as they wish. Now, let me give you another caveat on the other side. Almost nobody wants to eat and drink a lot when they're in the throes of labor. They almost don't want to eat anything. It's like a marathon, right? Like in hard exercise, do you ever see marathon runners? They're not like eating a giant sandwich or a pizza, right? Do I have any marathon runners out here? If I do, tell me what you eat and drink. They're, you'll hear like they'll have goo or they have these beverages, these electrolyte beverages, right? Or they might nibble a little bit, but they don't eat a lot. And that's the same for people in labor. So that's why they often say eat and drink whatever you want when you get here. You won't. So it's kind of long-winded, but I'll say light bland snacks, are useful. Crackers, honey, bone broth. So if you're in a liquids only, bone broth is often really nourishing and nurturing, but also gives people energy, and they tend to like that a lot. Has some salt, right? So people find that great for labor, also really fantastic for postpartum. A lot of people might do fruit popsicles if they're not, if they're more on the clear side of things, not necessarily, but a lot of places I've seen will allow that. And in the earlier moments, if you're not going to eat and drink during labor, but beforehand, basic pastas, like nothing too spicy actually in early labor because we might throw up later and that can be very acidic. But these are things to think about to kind of keep you going, to take a little spoonful of honey, right? Things like that. Oops, I covered up. Let's see. Most midwives, it would be safe to recommend eating because you need that energy. You're no more likely to throw up or poop during labor. We talked about a lot of this already. So other things to think about are packing a favorite hydrating beverage. If you're allowed to go clear, Labor-Aid is something that a lot of people will recommend, which is basically instead of just water, it's water with lemon and salt added. And it can be lots of other things. You can look up Labor-Aid. You'll see all sorts of different things. An amazing other drink is coconut water. Like if you can, fresh coconut, awesome. If you are open to some of the coconut waters that exist out there, coconut water is known to be very hydrating. Just plain water doesn't really actually hydrate us quite enough, and we will be right through it. Now, my doula tip, don't forget to pack a bendy straw. Why? Let's say I'm on all fours during labor, right? It's one of the most common positions people use, most comfortable position. So they'll get on all fours or they'll stand next to the hospital bed and lean forward. If I'm leaning really far forward, it's really hard for me to drink. So just put a bendy straw and I can kind of drink whatever position I'm in. The other thing to ask, right, is if I can't eat and drink, right, then what happens? And usually the answer is they will give you an IV of fluids. And that's why a lot of places routinely give an IV. But again, ACOG doesn't recommend routine IV anymore necessarily. So when would you need an IV of fluids? When is like eating or drinking not enough to hydrate you? Well, if you're throwing up and you can't stop, you're going to feel not so great, right? The uterus will contract, but not open. And when we get IV of fluids, we'll find actually that contractions will space back out because we will just go into this overactive contractive state if we're really quite dehydrated. So if I were dehydrated and I can't keep anything down, I would personally want an IV to help me rehydrate. If you plan to have an epidural at any point in labor, you may not want to refuse the IV. You may instead want to go for that because you absolutely have to have a bag of IV fluids before you would get an epidural. One of the side effects or risks of an epidural is that it can drop your blood pressure significantly. So the way they counterbalance that risk is they give you a full bag of fluids. So things like that to think about. So what do you pack for your entertainment and technical needs, right? If you have an induction or you plan to use an epidural, or you're pretty sure, or you're thinking ahead for the postpartum period. And why do I say this? And because inductions and epidurals typically, let's start with induction. Inductions are on the rise right now. You may want to look up the ARRIVE trial to learn more about why all of a sudden everybody's getting induced and whether or not that is appropriate. Really asking your own care provider, do I need to be induced? What about me personally? What would be the risks and the benefits of doing that? But inductions are long typically because you get induced to put your body clinically into labor before it is ready to go into labor. And sometimes you have a real clinical reason to do this, right? Maybe you have very high blood pressure, or you have preeclampsia or something like that, which the only cure is getting the baby out. So of course, an induction is appropriate. Induction can take a long time. It can take days sometimes. If your cervix is long and hard, not ripe or ready yet, we need to ripen the cervix first before they give the drug or medication called Pitocin, which is a synthetic form of oxytocin. Oxytocin is our own natural hormone that comes out of our body and also gets stimulated when we are having eye contact, getting sensual touch, kissing, using nipple stimulation, etc. Releases oxytocin, and oxytocin creates contractions, which is pretty cool, but it also rises and rises during labor to the point where when we give birth, we're at the peak highest levels of this amazing, what they call the love hormone, oxytocin. And when we have the baby at that peak of oxytocin, that encourages us because it's the bonding hormone, the love hormone, the hormone of well-being and interconnectedness. It's the hormone that helps us and connects us to bonding with our baby, but it's also the hormone that gets produced when the baby suckles at my breast or chest. And that nipple stimulation causes more oxytocin, which causes my uterus to contract now so I don't bleed too much after birth, but it also causes my milk to move. So it is amazing. Very into the hormone. Yes, you can tell. So inductions can take a long time because they have to ripen your cervix, and that can take 12 hours, 24 hours, 30 hours more. And not always have to, because some of us will have a ripe, ready cervix, in which case then they would just jump into the medication Pitocin. So if you're having that long induction though, or with an epidural where it can be quite a long time where we're now no longer in the state of being, coping in labor and our brain comes back to like what it is now, then there are some reasons to think about things. So a playlist of music is great for anybody in any phase of labor and any type of labor. It's having a book, board games, coloring books, those are all more for early induction or with an epidural. Nobody in the real like active throes of labor, for those of you planning an unmedicated birth, people in later or mid labor, it's very rare that somebody would ever be able to read a book or even watch a movie, or because all of our energy goes into moving and coping and moving through labor, and then we just want to rest in between the contractions. But these things can come into play. Playlist of music is good for everybody at any point. Cesarean birth, right? You might want music to be calming. In labor, if you need more energy, you put up a pumping dance song. If you need, you're feeling more anxious, or you just need some calm, you need to cool off, then that can be really nice. Some people like to have a device to watch movies and shows, right? Again, induction or an epidural. Usually not people in the throes of labor do not enjoy, they don't have the ability to focus in that way. It can be a distraction, but you never know what's going to happen. So good to have. Headphones are really great to go into your own world, to ignore everybody else. Portable speakers are awesome for bringing everybody else into your world. So like if I put on this like amazing, beautiful music, right? And my nurse or my OB or my midwife walks into the room and they've got music on it. Maybe you put out some fake candles and you've got the lights low and there's beautiful music and the candles and like the vibe is just different. And then the staff treats you really differently too. And they get into that vibe. So I love having speakers to set the tone of the room. But sometimes we just want to go headphones and maybe an eye mask and we tune everybody out, which can help us be in labor more. This is this is for people who either are using a virtual doula or who might have a family member or friend, but or partner who is not able to attend the birth in person for various reasons. This came up a lot during COVID, of course, and illness and various things, but it can happen sometimes when somebody's traveling or maybe is not feeling well, etc. Or maybe you have a parent that you're a friend you want to bring into the room virtually, so to speak, or your virtual doula. So you just clamp this on and you have this thing and you can FaceTime really easily. Lots of do have your chargers and your various things and your cords. But let me just say a word about cell phones here, if I may. I've been with a lot of people in labor and as a doula, and one thing that I find a lot of people in labor need and want is really focused attention. And when their partners are scrolling and texting and just checking work and all of those things, when they're in the real throes of labor, the person in labor can really feel uncared for or not taken care of. So it's a really good idea to talk about cell phone use ahead of time. Talking on the phone to other people is distracting. Like if you really need to check your phone or text somebody, most people really prefer that you do that, in the bathroom, but you guys can talk about it yourselves if you don't care at all. Hearing dings and seeing their eyes scrolling and doing other things, that's up to you. It's just like a really great thing to talk about because sometimes I've just seen it come up a lot. I've seen pregnant, laboring people just kind of swat phones out of hands, get really mad at their partners for not paying attention or not doing that double hip squeeze because on the phone. That's something I would just think about. So I talked a little bit about this already, but like, how do I set the mood to manage pain, set the mood? We know that if you think about, if I had you all right now, just close your eyes. Let's do this. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And I want you to really cultivate and conjure an image of a romantic evening. I want you to imagine if you were to set up your bedroom for a really sensual, intimate night. What kinds of things do you imagine? If anybody feels like dropping in the chat some ideas, like things that you might do that would make a vibe. Or I can ask you this way. So hopefully you're all thinking about it. Do you imagine a brightly lit hospital room? Now, I gave birth in a hospital too. Ooh, I love that. Low lighting, soft sheets, good tunes. Yes, right? So when you're thinking about this, you guys are birthing in a hospital, right? But that doesn't mean you can't have ownership of the room. Hospital rooms, when they're being designed successfully, and we don't have many of them designed in the ideal way, I don't think, in the US. If you look in other countries, like certain countries like the Netherlands have very different designs and they have like ropes coming down that we can pull so we can push more easily and in a tub in the room and various things. Like we don't really have that here so much. Okay. However, we can create the environment that we want to be in, right? So if you don't imagine yourself in a hospital room with bright lights, and I have a feeling you don't, for a sensual romantic evening, I want you to think like, oh, and why would we bother doing this? You might be saying, okay, what's the science behind that? Well, turns out they have studied this pretty significantly, and we know that bright lights affect people's labor. We see labor slow down when you are laboring in very bright light and when people are very observed. So mammals, if you think about it, and we are mammals, if you've ever watched your dog go to give birth, or you've ever watched a cat go give birth, or a tiger, or any mammal, and you can go do this on YouTube later, you see that they go to dark, enclosed spaces. They get into a dark box. They go into the closet. They go into a cave. It's very rare that if you had an animal giving birth, that they would like walk into the middle of your living room with all your lights on and with everybody watching. That's extremely unusual. So the more we do to set the mood in this way, and the more we tune out the outer environment, and the more that we recognize birth is a normal process, it might become clinical, it might become medical. And if it does, then our providers are there, right? And they might need to turn on those lights to see what's going on. But I spend, a lot of time as a doula, and dad's partners here can just turn off lights when they walk out of the room. We don't need them anymore. And the light actually interrupts our, melatonin and oxytocin, because those hormones work in tandem. And we know that bright light, right, like right now, depending, not those of you, I guess, in LA, but those of you on the East Coast with me, right, all of us looking at our bright blue screens at night before we go to bed. For those people who have some issues with sleep, they'll always say, like, try not to look at all this bright artificial light before bed, because that interrupts our melatonin release, which affects our sleep and all sorts of things. So they have studied it a lot. It's very interesting. So set a mood for relaxation and concentration. Even if you're planning to have an epidural, most people need to be in labor without medication for quite some time before they can receive that. And so it takes a lot of focus and concentration to move through contractions and to do that amazing work. So dim the lights, try to figure out how can I get my oxytocin flowing? And the reason we talk about the sensuality or the sensual nature is that we know that when we are acting sensual, or when we're kissing, or when we're, being touched in a sensual way, we know that that increases oxytocin. And I have worked with many OBs and midwives who will tell my clients literally to go make out, because they just know what that does. And it gets everybody out of the room also. But kissing, or literally, if you don't have a partner, you can play, with your own nipples. You can ask for a breast pump, and they will do that during labor, because it releases oxytocin. So those are natural ways to release oxytocin before we have to go to Pitocin, the synthetic form of oxytocin. So consider, pictures of loved ones, because that releases our oxytocin when we think about bonding. Images of beautiful places where we were relaxed and cozy, comfortable. Birth affirmation cards, which which are statements that might say things like, I can do this, I am powerful, I am strong. If those things resonate with you, if they don't, toss them out. You can look up birth affirmations, flameless candles. A lot of people will just put 20 out and make this really beautiful, room. And they can still turn on the lights, and then turn them off. And then you have your beautiful dim lights. Essential oils. This is an oil diffuser, right? Where you can have, like, let's say lavender, which is the calming scent, diffused into the room. Now, I always like to check with midwives and doctors before I would do something like that. I'm very sensitive to smell. I don't want my care provider, who has to work and deeply focus on me, if they were allergic to lavender or just really didn't like scent. I wouldn't want to force them to have to be in a room with that personally. So you can check in with your nursing staff and care providers about that. But if they do have an issue with it, you can always just bring cloths that have a little of the essential oil on it, or you can drip a drip onto your own washcloth. Soft pillow, favorite blanket. So Emma brought up nice soft sheets. Some people bring their own like nice soft sheets. They bring their favorite pillow, because the pillows they give you are these plasticky, like kind of flat pancakes. They bring a soft blanket. It's a great pain relief technique, is just stroking your hand on something really soft. So all of these things can help us get through labor and just make the vibe cozier, and feel like I'm not sick. I'm not in a hospital. Like, yeah, I am in a hospital because this is where my care provider is going to take care of me. And I'm here in case something does come up that is more serious. But otherwise, like, people have been birthing for eons, surrounded by loved ones and supported to move around. And smell the smells and listen to the things and imagine and get into different positions and all of that. So just think about if that resonates with you. And even if you're going completely clinical, right? Like you're like, nope, Jada, my birth is going to be totally clinical. I'm getting an epidural earlier. I have an induction planned. I already know this. You can still greatly benefit from these things. There is nobody who ever said, oh, hospital lighting just makes me feel so good. I know in the next generation of hospitals, they're going to not have fluorescent lighting. Like we know this because they've also shown tons of studies that people heal much faster in better, more attractive light, and with real sunlight and all of those things. So we already know this. So managing pain continued. So I talked about aromatherapy wipes. You might want lip balm. It gets super dry in the hospital, but that's also a good pain relief technique, actually. You're just rubbing your lips, believe it or not, or moving your tongue around in your mouth. Your mouth and lips are very sensitive, and those can distract from the greater sensation or cut down the physical sensation of pain. You might like to use a scarf or a sheet at the hospital, and we take these sheets or scarves, put them over your butt is one thing to do to kind of give a wiggle and a jiggle during labor. Or scarves can be used to pull. If I toss you a scarf and you're pushing your baby out, but you're not pushing as effectively as you need to, if I pull against you, it causes your stomach muscles to activate, and that can create a more effective push. Fine-tooth hair comb is a really easy thing to bring, and you just grip it. Actually, I'm just doing my fingernails into my hand, but when you have a fine-tooth hair comb, all those little pricks of discomfort actually scoot up to my brain and interrupt the pain pathways from my cervix to my brain. And when I interrupt it, it cuts it down in my perception. And that's what a lot of pain relief techniques are. We have a class called Comfort Measures for Birth. You're welcome to join us virtually or in person. Cold packs can be helpful. A fan, I talked about lotion for big, broad massage strokes. Pressure point massagers are great to have. We talked about the bendy straw. A tennis ball is awesome to have. I can sit that right behind my back and like give myself some pressure points or massage if my partner can't reach me. So paperwork wise, you want to stay focused on the business of birthing your baby. So insurance stuff ahead of time. You might fill something out ahead of time, but have your insurance cards with you and packed, your license or ID. If you're doing any kind of cord blood banking or placenta encapsulation materials, need to come with you typically, especially for cord blood banking. If you are, and lots of places have the ability to donate within, you don't have to do it privately, and lots of people are not doing it. Just saying that if you are doing either of those things, bringing ahead of time, a copy of your birth plan or birth preferences sheet, I highly recommend, or several copies really. And we like to call them birth preferences at Buber. We have a class here with Hatch about that. I'm also going to give you an article in a bit, a little blog post. Your doula contact information. Usually the doula is going to join you at home and come with you to the hospital. But if you happen to have a very fast birth or you're being induced, sometimes you may meet them at the hospital. And then in terms of packing for your baby, you actually don't need very much. The outfit they'll go home in, but if you didn't bring it, they'll give you one. A hat, but they'll give you one. But you can put on your own hat if you'd like to keep the baby warm. Socks if you want, or you might have footy onesies. Some people use socks on the hands if the baby's scratching themselves a lot, but most of the time we don't need to do that. Properly installed car seat, typically you need to bring or show. You can find out if you really need to do that at your place of birth. But if you do, sometimes you have to show that you have this part. The hospital will provide you with all the stuff you need, like diapers for your baby's stay. They'll teach you a lot of stuff. So we have a great newborn care class, but also learn a lot from the nurses. And then you're also allowed to take whatever they give you. So you can take more diapers, take stuff. But those are the main critical things that you will need for your baby. And then the what do I pack for me? So that's me working on the double hip squeeze, my pregnant person there. I love to say bring a doula for you. They will not fit, but they do make a huge difference. And I am a little bit biased. I understand that. I own a doula company. I am a doula. I've been a doula for a long time. I don't know any doulas who didn't have a doula at their birth. So I I'm a really big fan, but let me tell you why. Not just because, and I don't care where you get your doula from. You know, I just want you to have a doula if that's something that you want. But we help you pack, we help you plan the hospital bag, but we do a whole lot more. We bring tools to support you. We bring all the knowledge. But even more importantly, we provide physical support, we provide emotional support, and informational support throughout the entire time. We're the only care professionals who stay continuously throughout the whole labor. Doctors trade shifts, nurses trade shifts, midwives trade shifts. People come in and out constantly. If you have an OB, the average length of time that they are in there is around 5 to 10% of the time. Midwives a bit longer, but still, you know, they have other patients they're caring for. Doulas are your personal advocate. We're working for you and nobody else. So, you know, we can really tell you what's going on, what we're seeing. We do not make decisions for you, but we help, you know, help you come to the best decision for yourself. Make sure you have all the information you need to make your own best decision. We support partners who've never been to births before and help them through it. Big thing though, we reduce medical intervention like C-section, cesarean birth, you know, we see in various studies consistently 25 to 50% less cesareans. I mean, that is an amazing way to lower the C-section rate. Doulas shorten labor. Doulas increase successful lactation because we're there at the first feed, and more likely, you are less likely to have a cesarean birth. You're more likely to keep your baby in skin-to-skin contact. And we increase people's satisfactions with their births. So pretty awesome. Again, I understand, totally biased. Let me just drop this in the chat though, in case you are doula curious. Just gonna give you a link. Check it out. You can fill out this form, and we are always, wherever you are, if we don't have people on our platform in that area, we're always adding people. So please make a request and we will look to see if we can support you there. And doulas come in a wide variety of price ranges, you know, crazy range, anything. We will support you in any way at any budget. There's always a doula for you. And I also just want to throw out that many workplaces are starting to cover birth and postpartum doulas. So if you have not asked your benefits program, if you have one, are they covering doula care now? They may be throwing $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 or more dollars. I've seen just a huge increase in the last 6 months of what we're seeing out there. And finally, we reduce postpartum depression as well. So really great benefits. So let me give you some things to drop into the chat. I'm going to stop my share. Thank you so much for joining. And take some questions. Let me just give you some of our codes. So I'm just looking up at the codes here. If you want to shop at Hatch, let me give you the code is BUBERAMB. You get 15% off with that code. I'm going to give you a special link, but I believe you can use that code at any time as well. So if you click through, if you want to save any of these links, just click through and they'll open. Let me give you also our code for classes. So we have our classes at Buber are all right here, and I'm going to give you a code for 40% off if you book anything before tonight at 11:59. The code is Hatch April 8th. So this is the link. Click through that, and then the code is Hatch April 8th. So it's HATCHAPR8. And that is 40% off any of our online classes. If you're in person, coming to in-person classes, that won't cover for that, but I hope you'll join us for those as well. But it is for some of our amazing online classes. And our Prep for Postpartum class is fully online. I teach it live. We'll talk. We'll get to see each other. All right. So let me just make sure I was going to give you one other article about what we were talking about tonight. Let me just find it here. All right. This is the Ultimate Hospital Bag Checklist. Do you have any questions? I know I kind of threw a lot out at you. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this class. I like to keep it really informative and not just super basic. So I hope that you got a lot out of it, but it may have also had you thinking, brought up more questions. So I hope you'll join us for some classes to get that info. Oh, let me give you our Boober YouTube channel as well. So we are just starting to ramp up there a lot more, but we have a ton of videos there that might be useful as well about things that I've been talking. So please feel free to check that out. What else? Any questions for me? How often do I host at Hatch or on Boober? Boober quite a lot. We have classes. I would say I do either. I think I'm on Hatch like 2 to 3 times a month, actually. If you go to the Hatch Collection website, you know, and you can see, I think it's on their events page. And then Boober classes, we teach a lot. Our main classes online, those are usually once a month, and then in person very regularly. But for the online, let me give you our pre-recorded. We're actually redoing all of our pre-recorded classes, but for some of you who might not be able, they're actually not on the website at this very moment because we're migrating everything to a new website. So let me just drop that. Cute, Janie. I so appreciate that. If you enjoyed this class, actually your greatest thanks is like going out and telling somebody somewhere. So if you're on a Facebook group of parents, if you are, you know, talking to your midwife or OB and you're like, oh, I took this great class with Boober. We really appreciate that. As a mom-owned business, it means the world. All right, everybody. Do I have any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. Don't want to leave you here too long. It's after a long day of work, a lot of stuff going on. So thanks for spending the hour with me. And yeah, have a great night.